They saw a teenage girl with dark skin and a silk Oxford scarf, and assumed it was stolen. They didn't know the scarf was a gift. They didn't know the man pulling into the parking lot wasn't just her mentor. He chaired the department that made the scarf mean something. What unfolded in that quiet lot would leave an entire town questioning how much dignity is tied to what we wear, and how quickly people are stripped of it for looking like they don't belong. The wind curled around the bus stop bench like it had somewhere to be. Cold, sharp. Ayana pulled her Oxford scarf tighter, tucking the ends into her coat. The fabric was silk, crimson with silver trim, gifted to her 2 weeks ago at a scholarship dinner in Cambridge. It still smelled faintly of the old wood-panelled room where they'd called her name, where applause had followed her like light. Now it just made her a target. She sat with her back straight, legs crossed at the ankle, a paperback copy of Beloved in her lap. The pages were frayed, the spine worn soft from use. She flipped through it slowly, letting the story keep her company. Her phone was tucked away, no earbuds, just her and the words. She liked it that way. The parking lot behind her buzzed with life, engines starting, strollers clicking over uneven pavement, someone laughing too loudly on a Bluetooth call. But Ayana didn't turn. She'd learned to stay still, to exist quietly. She didn't notice the patrol car at first, just the feeling, that shift in the air, like the temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. Tires crunched on gravel, the hum of an engine idling too close. Then a car door clicked open. She glanced up. 2 officers, both white, mid-40s, one tall with mirrored glasses, the other shorter with a notepad in hand, and a smirk that showed too many teeth. They didn't walk fast. They didn't have to. Ayana straightened a little, but didn't move. She marked her page with a torn bus ticket, and set the book aside on her bag. The taller officer pointed with his chin. "That's a fancy scarf," he said. His voice was light, like they were talking about the weather. She nodded once. "It's from Oxford," she said softly. The other one snorted. "Oxford, huh? You get that on Amazon or something?" Ayana's fingers curled slightly, but her expression didn't change. "No, sir. It was a gift. I'm part of their American Scholars Program." That word scholars hung in the air for a second too long. The shorter officer raised an eyebrow, then looked her up and down. Hoodie, coat a little too big in the shoulders, scuffed boots, brown skin. "Right," he said slowly. "And I'm the Queen of England." His partner chuckled. Ayana didn't. She didn't flinch, didn't argue, just let the silence fill the space between them. Because she knew, she always knew. They weren't seeing the scarf. They were seeing the girl wearing it. And in their eyes, that scarf didn't belong. She looked away, back to her book. But the damage was already done. Behind her, the patrol car engine kept running. The cruiser rolled to a stop just beyond the curb. Not fast, not loud, just enough to be noticed. The officers sat for a beat longer than necessary, eyes scanning, minds already made. Ayana felt it before they moved. The way the hum of the engine settled into her spine, the way her breath instinctively shortened. She didn't look up, not yet, just pressed her book a little tighter to her chest, and fixed her gaze on the blank ad board above the bus schedule. Then came the doors. 1 click, then 2. Slow steps. Gravel shifting. "Afternoon," the taller one said. His voice was practiced, flat with the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Ayana looked up, calm. "Hi." The other officer glanced at her scarf, then her boots, then back to her face. "Pretty fancy for the bus stop, huh?" he said, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a joke. She blinked once. "It was a gift," she said. "I earned it." The taller officer tilted his head. "You did, huh?" His hand rested casually on his belt, the thumb hooked just beneath the edge. "Mind telling us where you got it?" Ayana adjusted her posture slightly. "From Oxford University. I'm part of their international program." A beat of silence. The shorter one chuckled under his breath, low and pointed. "Well, isn't that something? An Oxford girl right here in Franklin County." The taller one stepped a little closer. "Got some ID to back that up?" Ayana hesitated, just for a second, not because she didn't have it, but because she knew what could follow the reach. Still she moved slowly, deliberate, careful, unzipping the side pocket of her backpack, and pulling out a folded letter. She held it out. The officer didn't take it. Instead he squinted at the crest at the top. Well, look at that, he said. Real official, real impressive. The shorter one leaned in slightly. You sure you didn't borrow that from someone else's mailbox? Ayana's eyes didn't move. No, sir, he smirked. I'm just saying, folks around here don't usually flash silk scarves and Oxford letters at bus stops. There it was. Not a question, a declaration, a warning wrapped in amusement. Ayana stayed still, not angry, not flustered, just quiet, because she knew if she laughed, it'd be defiance. If she spoke too boldly, it'd be attitude, and if she walked away, it'd be a problem. So she stayed, book on her lap, scarf at her neck, dignity intact, but the laugh stayed in the air, lingering like smoke. The questions stopped pretending to be casual. Where'd you get that scarf, exactly? The taller officer asked, arms crossed now, his tone a little less polite, a little more lined with doubt. Ayana didn't flinch. It was a gift, she said. I received it 2 weeks ago in Cambridge, at the Rhodes Trust dinner. It's part of the scholarship award. The shorter officer raised an eyebrow. Rhodes Trust, he echoed, like it was a punchline. You sure about that? She nodded once. Yes, sir. And they just gave it to you? He asked, inching closer, eyes locked on the scarf, like it held a story he didn't believe. No receipt? No proof? Ayana's hand hovered near her bag again. There's a certificate inside, with the same crest. I can show you. Let's just hang on. The taller one interrupted, lifting his shoulder to key his radio mic. Dispatch. We've got a possible 10-229. Female, late teens, dark coat, red scarf, says it's Oxford issued. Can you check any recent shoplifting calls from campus stores? Ayana blinked, slowly, not out of confusion, but restraint. The words weren't surprising, just heavier than they should have been. She spoke evenly. It wasn't purchased. It was presented. At the high table, the shorter officer looked at her like she was speaking code. And where's that? In Oxford, she said. In England. The pause that followed was thin and taut. The taller one finally looked away from the scarf, eyeing her face instead. You ever been out of the country? Yes. Alone? No. With my mentor. And who's that? Dr. Elijah Rowe, she said. Chair of Humanities. He nominated me. The name landed, but didn't stick. Right, the officer said flatly. So a teenager from the South Side's being mentored by some professor in England, and just happens to be sitting at a bus stop in designer silk. It's not designer, Ayana said calmly. It's ceremonial. He snorted again, turning to his partner. Ceremonial, he repeated, like it was a joke. Behind them a car pulled out of a nearby spot. Another slid in. People were watching now. Subtly, slowly. Ayana noticed. But she didn't shift, didn't shrink. She knew the scarf wasn't just fabric, it was a signal. And somehow, to them it was also a threat. She folded her hands in her lap, letting the silence answer for her. The radio crackled again. And in the pause that followed, the wind pulled gently at the edge of her scarf, like even it wanted to leave. The taller officer tapped on his tablet, brows furrowed, the glow from the screen lighting his face in cold blue. His finger swiped slowly, deliberately, like he was searching for something he already believed to be true. The other one circled slightly, his eyes drifting to Ayana's backpack on the bench beside her. Mind if we take a look inside that bag? He asked, voice low but edged with assumption. Ayana didn't answer right away, not because she was hiding anything, but because she knew the moment she said yes, it would no longer be hers. The space, the silence, the dignity, gone. I don't consent to a search, she said quietly. The shorter officer's smile faded. We're just trying to clear this up, he said. Help us help you. Ayana folded her hands tighter in her lap. I'm not required to empty my bag unless you have cause. The taller one looked up from his tablet. We're getting there. Humiliation crawled up her neck like heat. Not anger, not fear, just that hollow ache of being made small in public. A couple walked past, slowing their pace just enough. The woman leaned toward her partner, whispering without subtlety. She probably took it. The words hit harder than any accusation. Ayana's jaw tightened. Her scarf, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a bullseye. Behind her, the taller officer shook his head. Nothing reported yet, he muttered. Then louder, for anyone within earshot. Doesn't mean it's not missing. The implication hung in the air like smoke, visible, ugly. Ayana said nothing. She looked straight ahead, past the transit sign, past the lot, past the whispers. She imagined herself back in the hall at Oxford, candlelight flickering against carved wood. Doctor. Rose's hand steady on her shoulder, as she accepted the scarf with trembling fingers and a stunned smile. But that was a world away. Here in this cracked parking lot in Ohio, none of it mattered. Not the scholarship, not the ceremony, not the hours of study or the letters of recommendation, not the dreams. To these men she was a girl with a suspicious scarf and a bag they wanted to unzip. More people lingered now. A man with a coffee paused mid-sip. A teenager with earbuds lowered the volume. The scene was quiet, but swelling. Ayana sat still, not passive, just unwilling to perform. The shorter officer leaned closer, his voice dipping. Look, just let us check the bag, and this goes a lot smoother. She met his eyes, steady. I didn't do anything wrong. The wind picked up again. It tugged at her scarf, and she let it. The sound was quiet at first. Just the crunch of tires on gravel. A black SUV eased into the lot. Smooth, deliberate. The kind of vehicle that didn't beg for attention but commanded it anyway. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Ayana didn't look up, not yet, but she felt the change. The SUV came to a stop 2 rows down. The driver's door opened with a soft click. A man stepped out. Tall, dark-skinned, dignified, camel wool coat, pressed slacks, polished Oxfords. One hand held a leather briefcase. The other adjusted his cufflinks with the same ease as someone who had never once been rushed. Dr. Elijah Rowe. He didn't hurry, didn't scan the lot like a man looking for trouble. He just moved, with the quiet certainty of someone who belonged in every room he entered. Ayana finally turned her head, and their eyes met. Relief didn't show on her face. It didn't have to. Dr. Rowe closed the door gently behind him and walked toward her, each step slow, deliberate, cutting through the tension like a blade through fog. The taller officer noticed him first, his posture shifting just slightly, curious, then cautious. Afternoon, Dr. Rowe said evenly, his voice calm, but unmistakably firm. Is there a reason my student is being questioned? The shorter officer blinked. This your student? She is, Rowe said. Ayana James, Oxford American Fellowship Program, full merit scholarship. I nominated her myself. The title hit like a dropped weight. The taller officer straightened. She was sitting here alone. Her story seemed inconsistent. Rowe raised an eyebrow. Her story? She claimed that scarf was from Oxford. The officer muttered. It is, Dr. Rowe replied. It's awarded to every scholar in our cohort. I have mine in the car, if you'd like to compare stitching. Silence stretched, tight, uneasy. A few people shifted around the edges of the scene, phones still out. Recording. Ayana didn't move. She didn't need to, because now the ground was shifting, and the officers felt it. Dr. Rowe took a step closer, his gaze locked on the taller officer. Did you ask her name before accusing her? No answer. Did you ask why she was sitting here? Still nothing. You saw a scarf and made a judgment, he said, voice low but razor sharp, and you wrapped it in authority. The shorter officer cleared his throat. We were just doing our job. Rowe's expression didn't change. Then let me help you do it better. He turned slightly, placing himself between Ayana and the officers. And just like that, everything changed. Dr. Rowe stood squarely now, between Ayana and the men who had tried to shrink her. He didn't posture, he didn't threaten, he just existed, calm, clear, immovable. I find it interesting, he said, that you questioned her scarf before her story, her clothes before her name. The officers said nothing, but their silence wasn't quiet. It crackled with discomfort, the kind that only comes when authority is no longer the loudest thing in the room. Dr. Rowe reached into the inner lining of his coat, slow and smooth, not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate, the way one does when there's nothing to hide. He unfolded a scarf, crimson silk, silver trim, identical. He held it up in the late afternoon light, letting the fabric catch the sun. I was given this the same night Ayana received hers, he said, at the Rhodes Trust dinner, under the Bodleian chandelier, in recognition of academic excellence and cross-cultural leadership. A ripple moved through the small crowd. Audible now. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "Oh my God." A phone shifted for a better angle. The officers stared, unsure of where to look. Not at the scarf, not at Ayana, and certainly not at each other. Dr. Rowe continued, his voice steady. "This isn't a fashion accessory. It's not a souvenir. It's a symbol of achievement, of belonging earned, not borrowed." He turned slightly, eyes sweeping the gathering bystanders. "But that's the danger, isn't it? When brilliance wears brown skin. When legacy doesn't come with a warning label." The taller officer's lips parted like he wanted to interject, but Dr. Rowe didn't pause long enough for him to try. "You approached her without cause. You escalated without reason. And then when her answers didn't fit your assumptions, you looked for a reason to doubt her." He folded the scarf back neatly, like it was sacred. "I've spent my entire career telling my students their minds matter more than their appearance," he said, softer now. "But that promise means nothing when two men with badges try to turn silk into suspicion." Ayana's head was high now, not defiant, just whole. The crack they'd tried to widen had closed. The crowd was larger now, still recording, still watching. Dr. Rowe looked once more at the officers. "This moment is no longer private," he said, "which means your actions are no longer invisible." Neither man spoke, and they didn't have to. The truth had already landed, and the scarf was still in his hand. Dr. Rowe turned to face the crowd now. No podium, no stage, just pavement, wind, and silence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word found its mark. "Dignity," he began, "is not something you wear. It's something you carry. And today you've all watched someone try to strip it away from a girl who earned hers tenfold." Heads nodded. A few phones tilted up. Closer now, recording not just a scene, but a moment. "You saw a scarf," he continued, "and forgot to see a person. You saw silence, and assumed guilt. That's not policing. That's profiling." The officers stood frozen, their authority shrinking by the second. Rowe's gaze moved slowly across the crowd. "We hand out badges, degrees, uniforms and letters, but if we don't pair them with humanity, they become weapons." Ayana stepped forward, quiet. No script, just steady breath, and an audience she didn't ask for. "I didn't say anything," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. "Not because I was afraid, but because I've learned that sometimes silence is the only thing they won't twist." A hush settled. She looked at the officers, not with anger, but something sharper. Disappointment. "I wore this scarf because it reminded me that I belong somewhere," she said. "But out here, it made me a suspect. So maybe the problem isn't the scarf." Someone near the front whispered, "Damn," barely audible. Ayana turned to the younger faces in the crowd. Two girls near the curb, maybe 14, still clutching their phones, but watching with wide eyes. "I want you to know," she said, "your voice matters, your story matters, and you don't have to trade your dignity to survive." Dr. Rowe nodded beside her. By then the footage was already online. Within hours, clips of Ayana's calm, of Rowe's words, of the scarf held high, swept across feeds like wildfire. Headlines blurred across screens. Oxford scholar, profiled at bus stop. Scarf and silence, a lesson in assumptions. She earned it. A mentor defends his student. Comments poured in, outraged, inspired, ashamed. But the real impact came from what people didn't scroll past. They watched, listened, reflected. By nightfall, the officers were placed on leave. A statement was issued. Meetings were called, policies reviewed, and through it all, Ayana never raised her voice. She didn't have to. The lesson had already been taught, and this time the whole world was in class. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. You too share it. Talk about it. Teach from it. Because silence shouldn't be mistaken for surrender, and dignity should never need defending. Subscribe to Black Roots for more stories that reveal, empower, and ignite change. Your voice matters. Your presence counts. Be part of the shift.